The day my daughter was born, and the moment I held her, I bawled my eyes out for like 4 hours straight. I was in so many threatening situations as a child. I got very sensitive to people's real emotions. I could feel their aura, I could feel their energy, or read their facial expressions. I was constantly the new kid. And you know what it's like being a new kid? It's really uncomfortable. What gave me calm in the storm was actually being creative. When I would go to a new school, it was kind of always an opportunity to reinvent myself, which is partially branding. So many people say, Dain, I want to start a business. I just got to plan it first. People want a sense of security. And I think maybe because of my childhood's lack of security, I kind of had this, I guess, rebellious bone in my body to just say, well, fuck it, let's just do it anyway. Like, let's jump off the cliff and build a plane on the way down.
Yeah, Dain, thanks for inviting me into your office. It's really cool.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Welcome to Rivyl.
This is Rivyl. It's just a completely different experience.
Yeah, we really wanted to stay away from being or feeling like an office. So even like our branding. So like if you look at our competitors, you know, you go to their websites, everything's black and white, minimalistic, clean cut, professional, kind of like poised and like we're the greatest. It's prestigious. Then you go to our website, we got like ripped bags, text is written on the screen, and it's so wild and kind of like humorous and cheesy that, yeah, when we started to build the agency, we noticed that kind of communicating that way drew a lot more attention from an entrepreneur type character. And then when people come in here, they're like blown away at the artwork. And yeah, and I think like when you run a creative team, it's so different to running like a corporate team. So I've worked in insurance, I've worked in sales, I've worked at dealerships and telecom and communications. And yeah, I just hate offices, man. So I was like, how do we make this place feel a bit more eclectic, a bit more like home, like a cool place to hang out?
Definitely. That's completely the vibe I get. Yeah. Like speaking of different, when I grew up in 6 different schools and moved around like hectic. So relating to your story was a big thing. And then in my research, I realized you moved 38 different schools.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
36, but yeah.
36.
Yeah. I actually sat down recently and counted it, and I was like, holy crap, man. But yeah, we moved around a lot when I was a kid. And I guess, you know, when you're moving around constantly, you kind of learn to rely on yourself, because I think, you know, some people grow up in the same house and they go to the same school and spend their whole life in the same ecosystem. Because I was constantly like every 6 to 4 months, like changing that ecosystem, I had to get really good at like adapting, really good at being in pressuresome situations where I was constantly the new kid. And you know what it's like being a new kid? It's really uncomfortable. So you had to kind of get savvy with being the new kid constantly. And the weird thing is, like when I was a kid, when I would go to a new school, it was kind of always an opportunity to reinvent myself, which is partially branding. Like it's like, okay, in this school, I want to be more of this kind of character. You know, it sounds weird, but I would just explore, you know, different parts of myself at each, like kind of like acting. You know, you're a kid, you're like, okay, I get to go to a new school. I'm 11 years old. I want to be this kid at this school. So, yeah.
So you just like basically tested on different characters like clothes.
Yeah. I think like, you know, when you're a kid, you're trying to discover yourself. You don't really know what your identity is. So I was just, you know, and each school had different culture, different curriculum, different things that they focused on. Like some schools were really focused on sport. Others were focused on creative. Others was, you know, super focused on academia and stuff like that. So it was constantly trying to adapt to those different environments. And like, you know, in school, you don't necessarily get to choose your friends. You kind of just end up where you end up, right? So I was always in different groups that had different things that they would talk about. But yeah, extremely uncomfortable. But at the same time, looking back on it, it's definitely given me the ability to adapt to, you know, stress or being in uncomfortable environments. Yeah.
Yeah. Growing up in school, getting used to getting put in with that much load, like that much discomfort.
Yeah.
I can only assume it would be pretty hard in that moment.
Yeah, but to me, that was like my baseline. That was kind of like, that was normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was my normal. And it was always in the back of my head that we're probably going to move again. So I wouldn't, you know, put my roots down and make too many friends. I'd just kind of, you know, stick to myself and be creative and, you know, do things that I thought was interesting. So I was really able to, in a weird way, maybe not get peer pressured as much or go along with the crowd. Like I never really had the opportunity to ever go along with the crowd. So I was just constantly doing things that I thought was cool. You know, and I would explore things that, you know, fascinated me, or I'd spend a lot of my time as a kid in the library because I would kind of hide from the discomfort.
Yeah.
So I would go to the library and just sit there and read books because that was too painful to try and make friends. And, you know, like I didn't know at that time. I just felt discomfort. And, you know, I always felt like I'm the outcast, I'm the black sheep, I'm the oddball. And when you're a kid, you just, you know, you think there's something wrong with you. So to deal with that discomfort, I would, you know, resort to the library and I would just sit there and spend my whole lunch break reading books, or, you know, go explore the rainforest just outside the school zone and get in trouble for like exploring. Like I'd just kind of be a bit of a lone wolf.
Did you always face that loneliness throughout all of school?
Yeah, I think I felt really lonely at home. You know, because at the time, like when I was a kid growing up, so I was in and out of foster care. And when you're in foster care, it's a weird dynamic because like I wouldn't be a permanent child of that foster parent. They kind of knew I'd be there for a period and then they'd move me on. So I went to multiple different foster carers. Right. So it's this weird relationship where they're like, they care for you and they love you, but you're not their child. So it's kind of like you're constantly with a babysitter. That's how it felt. Like they're doing it for maybe alternative purposes or an exterior reason other than they just love you. Whereas when you're at home with your parents, they love you. You're their child. So it was constant discomfort. I'd either be with family or in and out of foster care or in and out of different school systems. And I think like that became my baseline. That just became my normal. And then what was difficult was how to adapt out of that in high school. How do I, you know, because when I got into high school later on, it was like, I was able to kind of settle down, make friends, plant my roots and know that I wasn't going to move somewhere. And that was quite a confronting period in my life. And it, you know, it sounds horrible and sad, but like I look back at it now and it was such a gift to be able to handle that amount of discomfort and also to be that happy and comfortable on my own. So I was able to find ways at home because if I was with my mother, you know, quite often she'd be drunk or she'd be, you know, mixing morphine with wine and she wasn't really coherent. And I had different stepdads come and go. So I was always on my own. So I'd always have to like go into my deep creativity. And as a kid, I would immerse myself in a book or I would draw or I would like make up characters and constantly kind of relied on my creative brain to entertain myself.
Yeah. Oh, man, that would have been a whole experience.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, there was something I also faced because of I almost kind of lost hope in trying to make friends.
Yeah.
Because every time I'd make a friend, I'd have to move. Yeah. And I didn't want to deal with that pain.
Yeah.
So I resorted to being my own friend, you know, in a weird way.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Yeah, I can relate to that, man. You're like, I am my own best friend, dude. I know what I want to do right now. I want to go do, you know, I want to go ride my BMX or whatever, you know. Yeah.
How many conversations did you have with yourself?
Well, I think when I was a kid, I don't know what you did, but I would have conversations in my head. That was easier for me. I wouldn't have out loud conversations, but I was constantly like conversing with myself or creating worlds in my head or creating alternative stories in my head.
I think that situation is a very much so a pro and a con. It's a blessing and a curse in its own way in that now it's caused you to have this amazing company where you stick out like a sore thumb and the sore thumb is very effective.
Yeah, and I think like being an entrepreneur is like it's a lonely journey. You know, it's, you know, to me it feels like you're on a highway in a car on your own and you're traveling down this windy road and it's pitch black outside and you got one headlight on and it's flickering. Like that's how entrepreneurship feels. And I think like being alone for many people is so discomforting. Like, you know, I'm naturally an introvert and I think, I don't know if that stems from my childhood, if I'm a trained introvert or if I actually am one, but I enjoy the company of people and I love being around people. But it's other times it's exhausting to be around people. I like to go be by myself. And I think having a healthy dose of alone time has been good for me. But yeah, I think the loneliness of my childhood really parallels the loneliness of running a company. Because in many cases, you're kind of on your own, making big, hardcore decisions, taking risks on your own. And there's no one there to really kind of pick you up and keep you safe. It's just like, it's all on you.
Yeah, I was talking with my partner the other day. And for me, there was one of the biggest transitions of my life was going from that state of loneliness and being so comfortable being alone
Yeah.
and training myself to be around people and to function well around people.
Yeah.
And that's a trauma I'd have to almost heal from.
Yeah.
Is that something you've experienced?
Yeah, I can really relate to that. Yeah. And I think even till recently, you know, my partner, even my partner Elliot, took like 2 years to really build a lot of trust together. I know that sounds horrible, but like we were aware of it.
Yeah.
But early on in my relationship, I had to really work hard to allow her to like come into my circle, if that makes sense. It's really hard for people to get into my orbit, like really close to me.
Yeah.
And I remember Cohen Ray was talking about it, and he kind of struggled with the same thing, and it kind of pinged it for me. And it was like, when people try to become my friend, I become immediately suspicious. Like, what do you want from me? What are you trying to get out of me? Are you trying to manipulate me? Do you think I'm stupid? Like, it's just a giant defense mechanism that stems back from my childhood.
Yeah.
And I had to really pay attention to that and work on that. And I still am. But even recently, it's kind of a joke at the moment. I'm playing a game with myself. I made it a game. And like, I was like, I'm just going to decide people are my friends and just tell them again and again and again, like, we're friends, you're my friends. And, you know, I've been doing this with people, but it's a really great reset or mind frame for me to kind of change my programming, because my internal dialogue was like, I'm not worthy of friends, I'm weird, I'm an outcast, I'm a black sheep. And that's all programming from my childhood. My new programming is I can be anyone's friends. Everyone's out to help me instead of everyone's out to get me. Like, I've just changed the self-talk.
Yeah.
And slowly that's allowed me to really just kind of open up and relax and allow people to actually become my friends.
Yeah.
Because I had walls up for years, even till last year, and I've had to really let them come down and just have faith that people aren't trying to get something from me all the time.
100%. That's the whole environment. Yeah. You need to surround yourself with. It's like using the same skill of being creative and alone and creating that within your own head for a different purpose now.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one of my mentors was explaining to me, like, your mind is like a computer and you're running old software that maybe doesn't serve you anymore. And in your mind, maybe you have a piece of software that's like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, everyone's out to get me. Like, this is just programming. And he was explaining to me that you only really have two programs when you're born. One is I'm scared of loud noises and I'm afraid of heights. Babies are always born with those two programs. Everything else is adopted, like your fear of spiders or snakes, or everything else is programmed into you. So when you start to realize, I can actually reprogram my computer. You can't delete programming, but you need to work on changing it.
Yeah.
So you can't go into your access code and highlight it and delete. You have to highlight and change it. So, you know, the friendship thing, right? Instead of saying, man, my internal dialogue, and I literally wrote this down in a journal one day because I was journaling, and it was me trying to capture my programming. And a great way to capture it is the second you wake up, just start writing. It's so freaky what comes out of your head. So the moment you sit up, like, grab journal, and just before you think about coffee or what you're going to do, just start writing whatever comes down. Like, pen to paper and just start writing. And I was writing down stuff like, I'm not worthy, like just really horrible things that I was saying about myself in my own head. And then you kind of catch yourself in moments in conversations. So when you start to be aware, like, I'm constantly running programs, you start to analyze, hang on, why did I say that? Why did I get triggered by that? Why did I feel that way? Then you kind of hit rewind and you're like, man, I can't believe I'm thinking that. And I thought about that yesterday too. So then you proactively decide, I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to change the code. So instead of saying everyone's out to get me, and it's deeply unconscious, you're not like hearing voices in your head. It's like deeply habitual. But you highlight it and you write down stuff instead, like, everyone wants to be my friends. Everyone's out to help me. You just start switching the programming. Yeah.
Man, that's so helpful. And before coming here, I didn't even know that you were a father. Like you, Joey and Harlow. And I did not expect you to be a father, let alone using that experience that you have and reprogramming yourself to become a father. You know, how has that been? Yeah,
it's been really like healing. I think, you know, growing up as a kid and not really having incredible role models for parents per se, but like, in saying that, like, in a way they kind of were, like, they gave me so many gifts. Like, having an absent father gave me a tremendous gift. Having a mother, like, and she loved me and she adored me, but it just, you know, unfortunately went through a lot of turbulence and a lot of horrific situations. But like, being a father and then having a baby, like, I remember, it's kind of funny, the day my daughter was born, And the moment I held her, I bawled my eyes out for like 4 hours straight. I was a sopping mess. I was weak at the knees, and I was like, she's so beautiful. She's an angel. Like, it was this incredibly heartfelt experience. And then when my boy Joey was born, it was more like chest thumping, like, yeah, it's a boy. Like, it was such different energy. I didn't cry. I was just excited. So like, even a boy and a girl was such different energy. But for me, like, seeing Harlow as like this innocent child that completely depends on her mother and me to provide for her. It's like children are so innocent, and they're like kind of blank slates in many ways. And you're like, I am responsible for this person for the rest of their life. And you have a sense of that with your partner, but when you have a child, it's like 1,000x.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like so primal, it's so instinctual, it's so deep. And yeah, being able to feel that love for my daughter, I was able to actually feel how my parents felt about me for the first time. Right. And that was a really healing moment. That's when I started reaching back out to my mother and connecting with her. It was like, oh, you know, despite what happened, this is how she feels about me. And yeah, the emotions I felt I'd never felt before. And that was healing for me. It's like, oh, okay, like, you know, maybe my mother made some terrible decisions, but like at the end of the day, this is how she feels about me. And it was kind of heartbreaking. It kind of broke my heart for my mother, because she does love me. And and then as my children started to grow, I was able to really kind of like play like a child, like have experiences in a childlike way with them, like share that experience with them. Like when they learn to say their first words, and then they see you react to it, and they learn that they can communicate with you, and it's really special for them. Like there's just so many little beautiful moments where it was like, oh, maybe I didn't get to experience this in a child quite like this, but I'm experiencing it now for the first time. And it made it even more special to be a parent. So it's like even like a gift in that way. It's like the gift that keeps on giving is like, yeah, despite circumstances, I look back and I'm like, my whole childhood was a giant gift. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for it.
It's a whole perspective shift. It goes from subjective, this is what happened to me, to far out, there's a clean slate. There's a computer that hasn't even been programmed yet. Yeah. And how am I going to influence that?
Yeah. And like Ellie and I work really hard on that. So we even, you know, we're reading child psychology books around, you know, the different phases a child goes through in their mind. Like children don't know what sharing means until they're like 3. Like they don't really, you know what I mean? Like children don't know things until like certain ages, and their brain's developing. So it's really been great to know what stage their brain's at. Like, okay, her brain's now at the stage where she's learning to interact with other children and enjoy that. So let's really foster that, and like, let's make sure that we're maximizing that experience for her. But yeah, it's like you're constantly inputting code into your children. They say what you say. They act like you act. They speak like you speak. They model you. You're their role model. They spend majority of their life with you, and you're the only example they have of what a human being is for the most part. Until they go to daycare, then they start copying all of the crazy behaviors that other kids have. But yeah, it's been really a fun experience being a parent. Yeah.
I can only imagine how self-conscious you can become as a result. Is there any, like, if you had to put one thing that you noticed about yourself that you didn't want to, you know, feed on into your children because you were a father, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it was just, that's a good question. I think it's like, you know, trying to regulate my emotions more. So rather than fluctuating emotionally, like from happy to sad, and rather than kind of going on that roller coaster, I was really trying to be a bit more emotionally regulated, a bit more in control of myself, a bit more in control of my state, and then teaching my children, like, you can control your state. It's okay if you cry, but you can change that, you know, trying to help them understand that even though this is scary right now, it's going to be okay in 5 minutes. And they're like, oh, okay. They really, like, children really listen to you. Like when they're 2 years old, like, if they're in the right state, they really absorb what you're saying. And they believe it like they believe Santa Claus. You know what I mean? So when they're teenagers, I don't think it's the same case, but like, we'll get to that stage. But yeah, children just take your word on it for everything. And I play with it as well. Like I tell my daughter, I built every building in the city. And when we're driving, she's like, Daddy built that building. I was like, yeah, I did. You know, she thinks I built the roads, the buildings. She believes it all. Yeah. She just thinks I'm the greatest. Yeah.
My dad had this thing where he's like, my thumb can destroy every city that I put it on. He's like, and that's 1%. Imagine what 100% can do.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Dad, please, sorry.
That's terrifying. I like that.
Yeah,
My thumb can destroy cities.
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah.
use it. Yeah.
Was that from his dad or did he come up with that? That's genius.
I'm pretty sure it's his.
I might use that. That's really clever. Yeah, that's scary.
Trademark it. About growing up and having that mentor, having that role model, your conversations with Dave, the youth mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you know that. You've done your homework.
What did those look like?
Yeah, so Dave was kind of like a father figure for me, in many ways, and like, I think I was 17 and I was in like a really weird place because you're a teenager, you're emotional, like angry one minute, psychopath the next minute, happy the next, you know, like just a giant pendulum of emotions. And I remember like, Dave would just invite me to hang out with him and his wife, Sunita, and their children. And I got to see like a man with a wife and children and like what a family really was. I never really spent a lot of time with a family unit. And I would like babysit their kids and I would travel with them and I would stay with them with their friends. And I just got to see a family unit like function, like what a good father was, what a good husband was, what an incredible wife was. But yeah, he kind of like mentored me in a way. I think maybe he could tell I was a bit of an outcast. And I had a conversation with him one day. I was like, dude, why are we hanging out? Like, you know, there's so many things you could be doing right now. He's like, I like black sheep. You're a weird person. Like, it's cool, man. Like, and he was just calling it out. He's like, you're weird, but like, I like that about you. And, you know, and he would take me to like youth groups and stuff like that. So I'm part of the church community. And, you know, he was just, I guess, kind of like a big brother or a father figure. And it was the first time I experienced that. I never had anyone really care and not want anything from me. And that was probably the first time I really had like a genuine friendship with someone that really cared about me and didn't want anything from it. And that changed my life because from that point, it kind of healed me. I was like, oh, not everyone's out to, you know, do bad things. And what he gave me was so life altering. I just wanted to then pass it forward and do that for others. And so, you know, shortly after that, early on, I continued to go to church and I was like, I want to do good things for the community. And, you know, I was together with a friend in Brisbane and we would bomb hills and skateboard all the time. And we had these giant, like, you know, downhill boards. And, you know, there was a guy who was a Christian who owned a skate shop. And he would give away free skateboards and shoes and stuff like that. That was like his way of, I guess, building community. And me and a group of friends had this skate group in Brisbane called Espirito Santos, which is Spanish for Holy Spirit. And we would skate around Brisbane. And there's a car park in Brisbane that has like 12 stories. And you could catch an elevator to the top. We'd go there at like 10 o'clock at night with Slurpees, go to the top of the elevator. We'd roll out on our skateboards straight out of the elevator. You could get on your skateboard in the elevator, roll out of the elevator, and like just coast down 12 stories between cars, like parked, and slide your skateboard out. We'd like rub wax on the concrete and slide our boards out and stuff. But that turned into a community where we were doing what the church calls outreach. And outreach is kind of like marketing for churches. So we would go out and skateboard at like 8 o'clock at night and buy Slurpees and hand them out to kids. Or we would give away free skateboards and kids got to hang out with our community. And then they would be like, what's the deal with you guys? And we're like, oh, we go to this church. And they're like, can I come? We're like, you can come to church. That escalated into me doing ministry at that time in my life. And then also like preaching and being on stages and stuff and like teaching people about, you know, the Bible. And I had an apartment and my apartment was so cool, dude. Like it had shag pile carpet that was like that thick. The walls were like mint green, and whoever lived there before us had like giant Hawaiian surf prints like like across the walls. And the kitchen was like built in the 40s or something, man, because it would like the kitchen would like lean toward you. So it was really Art Deco and weird, but I had up to 1.8 people living in that apartment with me. Like I was taking drug addicts off the street, giving them a mattress and saying, you can sleep there. And I was like, there's 3 rules in this house. Like no girls, no drugs, no sex, you know? And you know, they broke the rules occasionally, but I, you know, was like, I can kick you out. So just don't do it again. And, but yeah, I was bringing these kids in and kind of modeling what Dave did for me. And I was trying to be like a big brother to these kids, and helping them just get off speed, get off cocaine, get off drugs, get off marijuana, whatever it is that we're doing. Some of them were alcoholics. I try to help them get jobs. I get them, you know, on Centrelink and getting them to have some kind of wage. And then I would help them apply for rentals and then they put them in their own rentals. A lot of these guys now have kids and families and jobs and businesses. Yeah. So like I found a lot of joy just helping people out of situations that I was in myself. For no reason other than I found joy out of seeing someone's life go from being lost to being, you know, stable and secure. And I could relate to them because I knew what it was like to be addicted to those substances or to drink a lot or to be kind of lost meandering through life. And yeah, in many ways, like I don't do ministry anymore. I don't preach or anything like that. But like in many ways, that's still a part of me. Like when I work with my clients, I care for them. I'm like, how do I really help this person build their business? Because in some cases, dude, we've had clients give us like, you know, what little savings they have, or they've sold their car, or, you know, people have done crazy things. And I don't ask people to do this stuff, but they've done crazy things to afford us and hire an agency. And I'm like, I'm trying to take this person on board as like a disciple, like let me help you build your business and let me help educate you and train you and send you on your merry way. And, you know, we've seen businesses go from startup to multi-millions in a year, within like literally months of working with us. So I'm kind of doing the same thing, but in business instead of, you know, getting people off the streets.
Desire to serve, that thirst for service is so important. Yeah. I grew up also preaching in the church as well.
Cool, man.
Yeah. And my dad's a pastor, so I grew up doing all that
what
stuff.
Church?
It was an Arabic Christian church, so it was like he came from.
So you know what I'm talking about?
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
The outreach, the whole lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is part of that community where it's almost like a brotherhood, at least in my situation. Yeah. It's like it comes so natural for me to want to give everything of me because I know how it felt
to have nothing and to have lack.
Exactly.
Yeah, for me, like church was just like a giant family where everyone cared for you and everyone genuinely loved you. And I think like, despite what anyone's religious beliefs are, like it's so important to be in a community where you belong, where people care for you, they want you to have good things. And, you know, Dave was just trying to, genuinely care for me because he could tell I was hurting. And just by being present, like he didn't do anything. He was just present. Like he just listened to me. He would allow me to hang out with him. I just felt included. And that was so much for me because it was like that was lacking my whole life. And then, and it wasn't like that. I had immediate trust for him. I was super like, what do you want from me? What's the catch, dude? You know? But after months and months of spending time with him, it enabled me to kind of like, at that point in time, like move on, you know, from my past.
I feel that so much.
Yeah.
That the ability to anchor, especially after everything's been so hectic, like when the norm is hecticness, when the norm is it's just waves and crashing waves on oceans, it's hard to have a river or a lake that's just still.
Yeah.
What do you think anchored you or allowed you to feel secure throughout maybe growing up?
Yeah, I think security was always fleeting from me. You know, moving houses is so stressful. Like constantly moving sucks, dude. Like you got to pack up your room, you got to take your posters down, you got to like, you know, set up your new place, and you're like, how long am I going to be here for till we do this all over again? So moving is like, it's up there with like the same amount of stress as like a divorce. I was reading somewhere, and it's like I was constantly getting divorced, you know, nonstop. But like, I think what gave me, I guess, calm in the storm was actually being creative. So I would, where my brain kind of switches off is when I'm doing something creative. So I'd be painting or I would be drawing. And it was like when I was 13 years old, I started messing with Photoshop. And I had like one of those pads, which you couldn't see like you can have an iPad now, you can draw it and see your drawing live, but it was just a pad with a pen. and you had to draw on the pad and it would show up on the screen. So I would illustrate on a website called deviantart.com, and I would upload like a picture of a dragon I drew, and people would comment on it, and I would start to, this is kind of like pre-social media days. So I was looking for community nonstop when I was a kid. And communities I fell into, because I was a nerd, was like I would join gaming forums. So there's a gaming forum called warriornation.net, and I joined that community. And it was like an online community of 6,000 gamers all across the world. And they would have different categories. So there'd be like a Minecraft group, there'd be a Call of Duty group, there'd be a World of Warcraft group, and they had all these different games. And we would jump on like Ventrilo at that time, which is kind of like Zoom. It's like Zoom without video.
Okay.
You'd be in a channel and you'd be chatting with your pals, and you'd be like raiding a dungeon in World of Warcraft and like chatting about your life while you're doing it. So like I was building friends with people I'd never spent time with physically, but I'd talked to them for years. Like some of them I still talk to. I've talked to a guy named Justin since I was 13, and I'm 33 now. We've been chatting for 20 years. I know his whole life. I know his upbringing. We've never met in person. He went through the Marine Corps and joined the US Marines. And when he wasn't away, we would game together. So a lot of my friends were digital. So when I started to create content on Instagram, it was kind of the same thing for me. It was like, I'm not here to get something. I'm here to build community. And I think that was my bone. Like when my DNA, my bones were like, I want to build a skate crew, or I want to join a church group and be a preacher, or I want to, you know what I mean? I was constantly just like interested in being a part of something bigger than me. And whether it was gaming, skating, BMXing, tried to be a B-boy at one point, it didn't really work out. I tried to play basketball. I was terrible. I think early days, like pre-social media, forums were the thing. So a lot of people don't realize this, like people were spending a lot of time on forums, and you could create a board, and what you would do on a forum is you would write a topic. And this is like early days of Reddit. So you'd be like, here's a topic, here's my opinion. It was like a blog to start a conversation. And then people would add a thread to it. So they would reply to it. And then you would see a string of like 20, 30 replies. And then it would turn into pages of 60 replies. And people were having full-blown conversations. And I was doing this when I was 13. I was like having conversations with like 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and 60-year-olds about games and like strategies for playing the games, and like fully like absorbed in this community for a long time. And I helped work on the platform. I was doing graphic design. I was doing branding for the gaming clan when I was 13. That's great. Like, how do we do ads on Google? How do we get more traffic on the platform? How do we create visual stimulation to recruit people in Call of Duty to join our clan? Because the other clans suck and we're the greatest clan. So then I was constantly like doing marketing and advertising from 13, 14, 15 to get people onto this website to play games with me. So then when I started building social media, it was no different. It was just like, I'm here to build community. Like, who out there wants to collaborate and hang out and spend time together?
That capacity to create is massive.
Yeah.
It makes anyone a valuable member of society, because the initiative needed to do that, it's uncomfortable. To find every problem available within that community and want to make a solution within that problem.
And I was always doing it. So when I played World of Warcraft, I created my own clan. And I would recruit and hire people. I gave them ranks. I created rosters of like who would do what times of the week. If people weren't there, I'd punish them. I'd call them and text and be like, where are you? We're waiting on the raid for you, man. Like, we're relying on you to slay, the Lich King. You haven't showed up. You're late. Everyone's hanging out online. Like, I was like running a business in World of Warcraft. Like, running a guild in World of Warcraft is a freaking business, man. You need capital to pay for the website, to hire the Ventrilo channels. I needed donations from my guild members to keep the stuff online. We treat it like a business. And before World of Warcraft, it was Habbo Hotel. So when I joined Habbo Hotel, I didn't have a credit card. So I had to, I don't know if you know what Habbo Hotel is. It's like
I'm too young for that.
Yeah, just Google it, bro. It's embarrassing. But like, I'm a kid, man. I'm 14, So habbohotel.com, it's still around. You can still play it, but it's like an online community. And you can pay a credit card and like buy furniture and create like an apartment in the game. Okay. So basically the game gives you free rooms, but if you don't have furniture, it's kind of like you should buy some furniture. So you can spend $1 to get a couch, $2 to get a TV, and you can create like your own apartment. You can invite your friends over to your apartment and chit chat to them in the channel.
This is your zone. You're used to moving.
Yeah, right. So I'm used to moving all the time. But I became one of the wealthiest people on Habbo, and I never swiped a credit card. So I got like, this is again building a business within a video game space. So I'm 14, I'm in Habbo, and I start like offering services to people in the game in return for furniture. It's like, I'll work for your pretend bakery if you give me a piece of furniture. And then I would go to other channels in the Habbo hotel and I would trade my furniture with other people. And then I built a guild in the platform and I recruited people, and you could pay for a promotion. So I had a military in Habbo Hotel and I had like 60 ranks, and people would say, you know, how do I get promoted? I'm like, well, you can work 3 days a week, or you can give me a couch. And people would donate to me, and I created a casino in the game, and people could gamble their furniture, and the house always wins. Yeah, super nerdy stuff, bro. But I think my business acumen just kind of came from the community building. It's really weird. Yeah. I've never really talked about this.
Shout out to Habbo Hotel and
Habbo
World of Warcraft.
Taught me a lot about business, bro. Yeah. But even when I was a kid, man, so like even when I was in one of my foster homes early on in my childhood, I would, you know, like Gary Vee kind of talks about this stuff, but I used to knock on people's doors and say, can I wash your car for $2? And then I would go door to door and spend half my Saturday washing cars. And then I would go buy Mars bars or Skittles or whatever I wanted. And then in high school, I used to, I had 2 backpacks. I filled one up with chips and soda and one up with my books. So in high school at that time, they banned chocolate and they banned soda and they banned icy poles and like anything delicious, chips, chicken nuggets, banned. And the vending machines got taken out of the high schools, and I'm like, supply and demand. So I just went to Coles, bulk ordered soft drink and chips and lollies, loaded my backpack up with this stuff. I had ice packs and everything. And there was 2,800 students in my high school in Mountain Creek. And I would walk around on my lunch breaks selling a can of Coke for $3, and I bought it for like $1.14. And then I would use that money to pay the smart kids to do my homework. And I was getting straight A's in year 10 because I was paying kids smarter than me. And I figured out that like there was 4 different sub schools. So there was, you know how you have sports day and you have like the different teams in the school. So I was like, well, the teachers within one quadrant of the school cross-check their work. But if I hire a kid who from another team to do my maths assignment, he's in a different teacher circle, so they won't cross-audit. So I was being entrepreneurial, and I was like figuring out how to rig the system. And I was getting straight A's in school, and the teachers couldn't make sense of it. They're like, this guy's an idiot in class. He's getting straight A's. Like, how is he doing it? And it's because I was making money on my lunch break and then paying people to do it for me.
I want to know how you got away with it. Like, how do you got away with selling the stuff without teachers getting to know?
I had teachers buying it from me as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the teachers like didn't care.
Yeah.
Like think about it. It's like curriculum for the school, and teachers like, because the teachers went to the vending machines more than we did, and they would buy the junk from the tuck shop more than we did anyway. So like you just had to make sure the principal didn't see it. But yeah, I had a guy named Mr. Jones. Every day he was like, "Oh, what do you got today, mate? You know, give me a Mars bar." Yeah.
So funny.
And he paid me more, which was great. Yeah, I think they kind of appreciated the hustle. They're like, this kid's like,
he's going places.
I can't be mad at him. He's figured out a system. It's great. Yeah.
Tell me about T-Base, the t-shirt shop.
Yeah. So when I was, oh man, I always forget what age it was when I started working there. I was 17. And yeah, that was interesting because like I didn't have a job at the time. I remember this really well. So I didn't have a job at the time, and I went to McDonald's. And I was like, man, if I could get a job anywhere, it's probably McDonald's. And I remember applying for a job at McDonald's, and I called them up 3 days later, and they're like, they were like, you're too old for the job. I'm like, I'm 17, and like, you're too old, man. I'm like, okay, you do hire 13-year-olds. That's valid. And I was applying for jobs, and I couldn't get work, and I went to Centrelink and they said, look, you've been applying for jobs for too long. Why don't you go get a certificate? So I was like, okay, what options do I have? And I went through the list, and they had a certificate in retail. I was like, oh, that'd be fun. I was like, it'd be really cool to work in retail. And so it was a Cert 4 in retail, and it was really great because the place where I did it was like right across the road from where I live. So like kind of meant to be. And I got my Cert 4, and they were teaching us in the classroom, like, go to retail stores and tell them you're doing a Cert 4 and ask, for job experience. And I remember I had applied to T-Base a couple times before, because every time I walked in there, I'd just buy band T-shirts. They had like Chili Peppers or Rolling Stone shirts or whatever. And I was like, that's really cool. And I'd always talk to the person behind the counter. Her name was Roxy. And I was like, Roxy, like, are you hiring? And she's like, well, you have to know how to use Photoshop. And I said to her, I've been using Photoshop designing gaming forums since I was 13. And she's like, yeah, whatever, dude, And yeah, I went in there one day and Roxy was there. And I said, hey, Roxy, I'm getting a Cert 4 in retail. She was like, cool. And I said, look, I know Photoshop. Like, can I get behind the counter and show you? And she's like, sure. Like, the store's
straight into it.
So I was just like, get me on the computer. So I got on the computer and I started like editing a T-shirt. And she's like, that's actually really good. Like, I designed like a band T-shirt. And I was like, yeah. Downloaded a font, installed it into Photoshop, and like took a photo and started editing the photo and design a band shirt in like 3 minutes. And she's like, that was really good. You could probably design merch for the store. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. She's like, I can't make the decision though. Let me introduce you to Caroline, who's the boss. And, she's like, come back on Wednesday at like 5 o'clock, I think it was. So I went back there on Wednesday and I met Caroline and I was like, I want to work here. And she goes, yeah, I heard from Roxy. And she said that you did like really good design stuff. And I was like, yeah, really love to work here. And she's like, well, what else can you do? And I was really awkward at that time. Like, I was great communicating on a forum, just a bit awkward in real life, let's just say. A bit weird. A black sheep, an oddball, right? And she said to me, look, I'll give you a chance. You can work the rest of the day. So then I just started talking to customers. I started cleaning the store. I was like, I took it serious, man. I started mopping the floor, greeted people when they came in, and she could just tell I was like a natural, like being hyper aware of situations and talking to clients. And started folding shirts and stacking the shelves. And yeah, at the end of the day, she goes, here's the keys, you can open tomorrow. And I was like, how do I use the till? And she's like, ring me, I'll take you through it. I was like, holy crap. So the next day I get there and I have to open the store and call her, and she's like, yeah, this is what you do with the till, blah, blah, blah. It's pretty straightforward. It wasn't even a digital till. It was all manual, right? It was just like 4 buttons, and you punch in a number and you hit sale and you swipe the credit card. And then I started working there 3 days a week, then 4 days a week, then 5. And I started taking design seriously. I started designing merch, and I would watch the customers come into the store. And I would pay close attention to, like, where did their eyes go? What do they look at? What do they pick up? Is it the positioning? If I swap the shirt that sells the most with the one that doesn't, like, does that shirt sell instead? And I was like, it does. That position in the store is the best position. Whatever we're trying to get rid of, I'll put there. So I just started becoming very aware of, like, the situational positioning in retail. Like, things had to be well lit, things had to be clean, things had to be organized. You had to organize the shelves and the rows to be clean. You couldn't bunch shirts together too tightly. I was like analyzing everything and really enjoying it, like really enjoying the process of managing this store. And I was left to my own devices. I didn't have a manager over my shoulder. I'm like, this is my responsibility. So I had this feeling like this is my store, and customers would come in and they would kind of treat me like I'm the owner because I'm the only one there. So I really was kind of thrown or thrust upon this situation of like, I had respect. People like thought I was cool because they're like, oh, he's the cool guy with the cool haircut that works in the cool store. So I had significance. I had value. I started making friends. People started inviting me to, their barbecues, and I made a lot of friends there. Again, just started naturally community building the way I did virtually, just right? But in real life. And I started being very critically aware of how things would sell. And then I started making suggestions. I would say, like, why don't we try to sell shirts on the store and do e-commerce? And she said, well, I have an e-commerce store. It just doesn't do very well. So I designed a flyer and I was like, can we hand these out? And she's like, sure. So I remember I would hand out a flyer to every customer that would come in the store. It was like $1 per flyer. It was like this really hard, beautiful flyer that we designed. And every single customer that came in the store, I put one in their bag. I told them to go on the website. And then website sales started to go crazy. Because I noticed that most of our customers weren't locals. They were tourists. Okay. And they loved our T-shirts. And I would say you can continue buying them when you go home. But then when I looked at the website, maybe 5% of the shirt designs in store were on the website. So I started taking photos of my colleagues in the shirt, post-editing it. And then I started designing t-shirts that we hadn't printed yet and putting them on the website, and they would sell. And then we would order those shirts. So I started selling stuff that didn't exist yet. I started really playing with the marketing. I started messing around with the Facebook. I started making Facebook content. And this is kind of like pre-Instagram being really big.
Yeah.
And
I had a look at Facebook, on your Facebook.
yeah,
And for a period of time from about 6 months to a year,
yeah,
it's just you reposting T-Base.
yeah.
T-Base, designs. Hey guys, have a look at what this is. Oh, this
Yeah.
is so sick.
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
Like the content I was making, the shirts I was making. You know, and I remember one time there was like a trending shirt on the internet, and I like redesigned it, and the trending shirt was Train in Saiyan, like, you know, Super Saiyan.
Yeah.
It had like the face of Vegeta or Goku or like one of the Super Saiyans, and it just said Train above it and Saiyan below it, and we sold thousands of that T-shirt. And I remember one day being at the beach and looking around and seeing like 100 people wearing a shirt that I'd like designed. And I just had this feeling of like, this is so cool. These people don't know I designed the thing that they're wearing. And I designed heaps of other stuff, and I would see people out and about all the time wearing merch I designed. And it was just a really good feeling. So I was constantly designing. I was constantly in retail. I was constantly selling and communicating to customers. And we had big bulk orders come in. Like Coles would come in and say, we need 1,000 shirts for Christmas. And I'd be there designing Coles' Christmas shirt. You know what I mean? So we would do big orders, little orders, and custom designs. And in the store, we had a print press, a heat press. We had a DTG print garment machine. But yeah, I just learned a lot about photography. I updated the website. I produced their content. So I've, in a weird way, always been branding, designing, and marketing. I just didn't know it.
Yeah. That skill set, I mean, up until what, 22?
Yeah.
It's just constantly being refined.
Yeah.
And that all came from just a weird childhood, like just a different
Just
childhood.
a weird childhood, just being a weird kid. Yeah.
And then that led you to the great time of 2016, where your wise self started at Twitter at the time, and your Twitter, Dain Walker,
You mean my Instagram?
Your Twitter. You have a Twitter.
I do have a Twitter. I barely used
and
it, but
it was
old.
just used 2016. It's all motivational stuff.
Yeah.
Like all of it. And then I'm like, when did this happen? And I'm genuinely curious to know.
No one's ever asked me that. I forgot I even had a Twitter account. Because I started in 2016. At that time, I think I was at World Gym. Yeah, I was at World Gym at that time. And you know what it's like when you're in a gym? You're listening to like non-stop motivation, like get in there, get it done, lift weights, you know. And I was like, yeah, let's share some of this on Twitter, bro. So that's all that was, man. Yeah,
man. Your first post, it says commitment makes more money than perfection.
Yeah,
sage.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. Yeah, perfection is not my style. Yeah.
I think a lot of people get stuck with wanting it to be perfect, wanting it to be exactly as they ideal it in their mind.
Yeah, well, so many people say like, Dain, I want to start a business. I just got to plan it first. And I get it, you know, like people want a sense of security. And I think maybe because of my childhood's lack of security, I kind of had this, I guess, rebellious bone in my body to just say, well, fuck it, let's just do it anyway. Like, let's jump off the cliff and build a plane on the way down. It'll figure itself out. Like, being uncomfortable isn't something that can, I guess, lock me up or freeze me.
Yeah.
It's almost like, because it was my baseline, I'm like, I can operate in this situation, no problem. I can think straight. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, Dain, you know, I need to plan this before I brand it. And I'm like, no, you need to start, and we need to brand it while we go. Because branding isn't one and done. Branding is like constant work. Marketing is constant work. Sales is constant work. Advertising is constant work. Like, these things never stop. And these are things that your business, it's like the engine of your business. If you had 4 cylinders in your business, it's branding, marketing, advertising, and sales. They're 4 very different functions, 4 very different games you need to play. And then above that is systems and structure. And if you can have systems and structure for everything, for sales, advertising, marketing, and branding, and you are spending 80% of your time taking action, even if that engine isn't perfect, even if that engine's operating at like 20% of its capability, but the engine is running, like, you can make money. Yeah, I was making money with my agency before I even had a name for my agency. And that was just by telling people I have an agency. And they're like, what's it called? And I'm like, Victory Front. You know, at that time, that's what it was called, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, like people would say, well, what does that mean? I was like, maybe the name's not great. I'll change it later. You know, I just was so action obsessed that I felt like perfection was just slowing me down.
Yeah, that's massive. In my mind, when you're saying that, the only thing that would make me want to buy something from someone is if I trust them.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with their branding.
Yeah.
As per se, in terms of their logo.
Exactly.
Or what their name is.
Yeah, like the 3 Ps in sales is like, is the price fair? Do I like the person? And do I trust the product is going to do what I need it to do? The 3 Ps are the reason I believe why people make that decision. If you're sitting in front of someone, you're like, I really like this person. Tick. This product makes sense. Tick. The price is fair. Tick. If you can tick those 3 boxes, they're going to buy from you.
Yeah.
Despite branding, despite marketing, despite advertising. But that'll only get you so far. At some point, you need to be able to appeal to strangers. You need to be able to gain more attention, right? Like I think early on, like if you're in startup phase, just go for it. Just start pitching and selling and just see what sticks and what lands. It's like throwing mud at the wall. What sticks? Well, that didn't stick. I screwed that call up. Let's just try it a different way the next time.
Yeah, a quote that you borrowed that hit was, if you started your business with a logo, you waited too long.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, well, I guess I did something wrong. You know?
Yeah. I think people like, and ideally, like you want to start with good design, and it depends on the entrepreneur. Some people really need a plan, and that's cool. That's totally okay. I think the way I operate, my natural operating rhythm is just move. And as I'm moving, I'm just constantly adjusting the plan. And you know, Cam and I were talking about this yesterday. So Cam's our media coordinator here, and we were talking about, you know, the book I'm writing for Wiley.com, and this concept of like, you know, imagine you're starting a business and you're at the start of a runway and you're in a plane, and imagine you're in the cockpit. Your family are on board because they're coming on your entrepreneurial journey, whether they like it or not. If you're an entrepreneur, your family are on board,
Best
right?
believe.
And the windshield's painted black. And you have a choice. You can coast down that runway and be careful, or you can accelerate as hard as you can and pull on the joystick as hard as you can and just pray that you make it above the tree line before you hit it. And people say, well, what if you hit the tree line? I'm like, well, go get another plane and start again. You know, like if you crash and burn, that's cool. Like plenty of people crash and burn. I think most millionaires crash and burn 13 businesses before they become a millionaire. And that's okay. It's just like learn quickly. Like if you're gonna fail fast. You know, I think that's from Robert Kiyosaki. And the analogy that we had was like, if you think about that cockpit situation, like business is all about momentum.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get momentum in business. But once you have it, it's easy to keep. It's easy to lose as well. Like it's easy for momentum to slip away if you get lazy. And I was lazy many times in the beginning of my business where it started to slip and have problems. And you got to keep your foot on the accelerator for a long time to succeed at business. And I think like to circle back to answer your question, like when you're in that plane and you're in the cockpit, let's just say you've taken off, you're above the tree line, you're gaining altitude, you know, you as a pilot have to constantly look at the data and adjust. Let's just say you're flying from Sydney to Japan. You can't just say, I've got the perfect strategy, the perfect plan, it's all going to go smooth from here. No, every 5 minutes you're looking at the GPS and you're saying, oh, I gotta turn a little bit to the left. Oh, let me raise my altitude a bit. Oh, I've got some turbulence. Let's go around that cloud or around that storm. So in business, you never know what's on the horizon. And you have to be constantly ready to live test a new plan. Come up with a plan then and there in that moment, make a decision and move. And it might be the worst decision. You might fly into the storm, but then when you're in there, you make another decision of how do we get out. And I think so many people that start a business try to have the whole plan before they start, but it's useless because once you gain altitude, the plan's useless anyway. Like once you start a business, you realize how much you don't know about business, and then you have to come up with a new plan anyway. So that cylinder's never perfect. The 4 cylinders, the branding, sales, marketing, and advertising cylinders, they're never perfect, man. And you're constantly a mechanic working on it. You're like dyno testing the shit out of your engine. Like, how do we get another, 10 horsepower out of this thing. Yeah.
It's a massive analogy, and it's really humbling as well. It's like you don't know everything when you start, and you won't know everything anytime.
You don't know what you don't know. There's so many unknowns in business, and I'm still learning. Like the bigger we get, the more people we have on the team, the dynamics change. Like managing 5 people is so different to 10. That's different to 15, and that's different to 22. Like 22 people, I really had to work harder on myself than I ever have. I had to be more of a leader, more of a delegator, more of a system producer than I've ever been in my whole life, all simultaneously to try and be a good father and a good partner. And it's not easy. Like, but also working in a role that you love isn't easy either. And succeeding in a career isn't easy. Like it's just, both of them are hard. It's just pick your heart. And this is the hard that I like. Yeah.
That's good art to have.
Yeah.
With Rivyl,
yeah.
It's the heart that you love.
Yeah.
What is a belief shift that you that had to change before you started and after you started?
Yeah, I think it's like really trusting my instincts. Okay. I would always second guess myself when I started, and and I had mentors and things of that nature say, no, you should do it this way, but my gut was like screaming at me, no, I should do it this other way. And despite things not making sense, I think sometimes you really just have to trust your gut because, somehow it's sensing something. I don't know how to explain it, but you have like a sixth sense when it comes to business. And I think like as a human being, if something doesn't feel right, your brain is constantly processing like unconscious data, and you might feel like it's a gut thing, but it might just be unconscious data. Like, I don't know, you pick up on something, you're like, this person doesn't feel right. There's something off. Maybe it looks great, but you're like, I don't feel good around this person. Maybe I shouldn't do business with them. I don't feel good with this partnership. Something feels off about it. Like, I think I've just, after 4 years, learned to really listen to that. Yeah. Despite the logical, like, oh, this makes sense. This is, you write it down on paper, you're like, this looks great, but then your gut isn't in it. And I think we have to learn how to listen to our gut. That's been the biggest thing for me, is really just saying, even if someone's saying, Dain, you're wrong, I'm like, nah, my gut says otherwise. I got to trust it.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think that's also the other part, and it complements starting and just doing it anyway. Because for me, when I started business and when I started anything that I was scared of doing, with enough reps, my brain just processed it subconsciously anyway. And that became my intuition. Yeah. Because I did it so many times, naturally my brain was like, okay, so I have a weird sense about this, but that's years and years of practice. Yeah. And I can only assume that after 10 to 20 years of practice, it's like...
Yeah. And the weird thing is, like, I learned stuff in World of Warcraft that I use in my business. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's bizarre. Like, everything bleeds together. Like, all your life experiences are culminate and homogenize together and become a big part of who you are. And I think, like, I've always been really good instinctively with people. And, when I was reading into it, there's studies that have been done that children that go through trauma have like really good sensitive acuity. So I was able to have a parent walk into the room and immediately judge their mood, because I had very sensitive awareness. I'm like, are they in a good mood? If they're not, I got to get out of here. So like, I think because I was in so many threatening situations as a child, I got very sensitive to people's real emotions. I could feel their aura. I could feel their energy, or read their facial expressions. I'm like, I know that face. That face means this emotion. Their cheeks are flushed. They're in this posture. Their arms are sloped. Like, I would just hyperanalyze body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, breathing. And I think when you're around people, you can feel if they're congruent or incongruent. And what I mean by this is, like, if you look at a politician, and they're on stage and they're saying something, but you're like, the way they're saying the words doesn't line up with the thing they're saying. You know what I mean? It just feels tilted. It feels, I call it feeling incongruent. And when I sit with someone, and let's just say it could be a client that is trying to manipulate me on price, or it might be someone wanting to do a partnership or something like that. My sensitivity and my acuity is like reading the language that's not the words. And I'm like, does this line up? Yeah. Right? Yeah. And then that's been a really good business tool. And another way I've heard it phrased is Kerwin Ray said, I spend time with people that feel like sunshine, not with people that feel like stormy clouds. That's just a really easy way to think about it. Like, does this person feel like sunshine, and are they genuinely sunshine, or do they feel like a stormy cloud? And avoid the clouds, spend time with the sunshine. And that's kind of, the biggest thing I've learned in business is just go off the energy of someone, not necessarily the words they say.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I don't think that's actually talked about too much. I mean, almost every deal is made person to person.
Yeah.
So not having that instinct is huge.
Yeah, and you can, it's difficult to do it virtually, but like at the same time, you're like hyper analyzing someone's face. So you can like, you can read people on a camera.
Yeah.
It's very unconscious, but it's a lot of experience of like being aware of how people feel. Yeah.
I think when I look back, the most meaningful parts of business tend to involve people.
Yeah.
And that tends to be the most fulfilling thing, period. And I think when people first get into business, it's either about money or pursuing something they love. And then eventually the love, after the business moves forward, tends to be the team.
Yeah.
It tends to be the people that they build. And that's just from the stories I've heard.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me because that's, for me in the beginning, it definitely wasn't that, even though what I do is about people and about loving what I do. Eventually, it is all about people. I mean, what is humanity becoming? What's society becoming? It's expanding, and connecting with each other is massive.
Yeah.
On that note, I know that in Rivyl, you love to educate your customers.
Mm-hmm.
You love to empower them through the content that you provide, not only to your socials, but also in-house. You know, if someone comes in and they want to start a business or they want their business to scale fast, they want their sales to be fixed up, they want their branding to be like, what's going on here? Education is the first part.
Yeah.
And you really want to sit down and deconstruct everything. Why is that such an important process?
Why like, so just to clarify, like, why is it important to educate the client on the process they're about to embark upon? Yeah, I think people have a preconceived notion of what branding is, and then I usually break it when people come on board, and I have to reconstruct what branding is in their head. And some people come on board and they look at branding as like, hey, I need a logo and a website. I'm like, okay, cool. What else? I need to have content creation. Cool. Why do you want all this? Well, we need more leads. Okay, cool. How many leads? More. Okay, well, how many leads do you get at the moment? Oh, we get 20 a month. How many would you prefer to have? I need 40 a month. Why? Oh, because, we're trying to expand into building our next office or whatever it might be, or we want to double our shipment orders and make higher profit margins. So usually on the introduction call with a client, I'm really trying to zoom in on like, what is it really they want, right? Because a logo and a website is kind of a deliverable, but it's not the reason they're doing it. So I try to identify and unearth, why do you really want to do this? And once I know the why, sometimes we adapt the deliverables, right? So if they're like, this is the most common misconception is people reach out and they say, I want you to do content creation for me. And I say, why? And they say, we want to generate leads. The first thing I say to them is, unless you want to build a community, like content creation won't really generate any leads. And they're like, but you have 600,000 followers, you know how to do it. I'm like, yeah, but I did that through community building, not through saying, buy my stuff. They're a company that's trying to say, hey, can you make content for us that makes people want to buy stuff from us? And I'm like, well, social media is a giant library. It's free for the public to access. And, having your page on there that's saying, please buy my stuff is like someone going to the library. It's like you walk into the library and I say, there's a good book over there about the problem you're trying to solve. And you pick it up and it has a credit card swiper on it. It says, please swipe your credit card to read this. Like, it's not engaging. Like, nobody wants to go on social media to be sold to. They're going on there for entertainment. They're going on there for stories. They're going on there to kill time on their toilet break or whatever. And people think that content creation generates leads. It does for me, but I've been building community for 4 years and I've been engaging and interacting and giving away free value and free entertainment. That's the biggest fallacy. And once I dive into that, I'm like, what does your company really need? And they're like, well, we need more leads. And I go, well, looking at your websites and looking at your current ads, like the creative's not very good. The copywriting is not really direct. I don't know who your target audience is. Your website doesn't really describe what you do very well. I start explaining to them that you have a communication problem. Like, you're not positioning yourself the right way. You're not communicating yourself effectively. You're not getting an attention, and you're not converting any interest from those that do see you. You have a brand design, brand communication issue. And then they're like, well, can you help me with that? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, where do we start? I'm like, where's the strategy? And they're like, I don't have a strategy. Well, we need to start with that. So we need to develop your strategy, then write your vocabulary, then update your design, then maybe we come back to content.
Yeah.
So the root cause of their problem isn't the content creation. So often clients misdiagnose their problem. In branding specifically, advertising, it's a little bit less. They know they need advertising. They know what advertising means. People look at branding and they oftentimes don't know really what it means. So like going to a doctor, I have to diagnose your issue. It's like a client doing a self-diagnosis versus a doctor doing a diagnosis. And yeah, I kind of feel like a doctor for companies' brands. And I'm like, man, this body's all over the place. We need to get you healthy. So much of why that's important is because if they want to embark upon this journey with me, I want to tell them what it really is. I don't want to just say, I'll create your logo, no problem, give me the invoice. I want to educate them on what branding really is. And we try to communicate it like creativity is powerful for a business. But so many business owners are so caught up in logic and systems and protocol and sales systems and infrastructure that they forget that creativity is a tool that they can implement to get attention. It's like they're trying to hit the market with a baseball bat, but they could use a magnet instead. Like, how do you become magnetic, alluring, captivating, and interesting? Beautiful design, beautiful photography, clever copywriting, a website that's fun to interact with, content that's going to make me giggle a little bit. Like, if you can actually be alluring instead of beating the market over the head with a bat and saying, please buy from us, like, that's branding. And I train that, and you'll see it on a call, and we've recorded every call we've done this on. There's always a moment on the call where the client goes, oh, how much? And that's when I'm like, okay, they know they want it now. So I have to have that penny drop moment for when they actually desire to want to do branding. If they don't have the desire to do it, and we've had plenty of calls where it's not clicking, they don't have the aha moment, we don't work with them. If I'm talking to them and the message is going over their heads, we will not work with them. That is a walking landmine of a client. If they don't genuinely appreciate and love creativity, there's no point wasting our time with that client. They will drag their heels the whole journey.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a pinnacle. It's the main pillar.
Yeah. If I give you a diagnosis and you, the client, say, I don't believe you, but I'll believe you when you prove it, I'm not going to work with you. I'm not the doctor for you, man. Yeah. Like, go find someone else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But the way we found that out was I used to just take everyone on, right? And I used to try to work with everyone. But we've learned over the years that not every relationship is fruitful. You have to be careful, and you have to protect your team. The bigger the team gets, the more I want to protect these guys from a client that's a butthole, you know? Yeah.
2 steps back.
Yeah.
Dr. Dain. Would it be possible to diagnose Reunited?
Yeah.
Right now?
Yeah, man.
Okay. Let me stand up.
Yeah. You can sit next to me and we can.
Oh, like right now?
Oh, do you want to show me your website or?
Shirt. And just on the shirt.
Oh, your shirt. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So like that's the back.
I like the back.
Right here.
Yeah.
And then that's the logo right there.
Okay. And the only criticism I have on the back, when it says Reunited, are you trying to have Reunited as one word?
Yes.
Or 2 words?
One word, but kind of split.
Okay. Kind of split or?
Split, yeah.
So you want people to pronounce it Reunited?
Reunited.
Okay, cool. Well, that makes sense that you got the 2-tone thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think you could do one color.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say usually, and this is like getting very nerdy, 2-tone word marks does feel a little like a dated maneuver. Everyone's going for the single word, one color lockup at the moment. And the word is quite long. So I would ideate condensing it down a bit more, unless you want to keep that as the main touch point. Because if you think about it, when a word mark is really wide, it's difficult to fit it in a square, it's difficult to fit it in a triangle, and it's difficult to fit it in a circle. So like when we design word marks and logos, the first things we look at is can it fit easily into those situations? Because digital landscape kind of requires you to do that, but not in all cases. If your predominant touch point is the back of a shirt, you can have a long word mark.
Okay.
So yeah, it depends. There's so many variables, but I like the symbol you have on the front of your shirt.
What do you reckon it symbolizes?
It looks to me like a sword that's maybe on fire, or yeah, it feels kind of fierce, masculine, and kind of clever and creative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So it's important to keep things short, sweet. If someone's thinking of starting something and getting their brand out there, the shorter, the sweeter, the more relatable, the better.
Yeah. So my friend Matt Purcell has a beautiful quote, and he says, "It's not about being clever; it's about being clear." You can still be clever, but like as long as it's clear. So a lot of the issues we see with brands is they're unclear, and usually they're unclear because they're trying to be too many things. They're trying to appeal to a mass audience. They're trying to be too wide, and it's not like you have to pick niche and ultra niche or super wide. There are, I guess, categories in between.
Okay.
And I think it's really important as a brand, you really know who your audience are, what they care about, why they should pick you over your competitors, what makes you unique. And I think simplicity is key. Like if you look at some of the greatest brands of all time, always very simple. Zoom, Apple, Dyson, Harley Davidson, Spotify, like very simple messaging. All the big brands that are public brands, like not big companies that you haven't heard of, like, you know what I mean? But like big public brands that we know and use. It's always very simple. They always have a very simple pointed message that's the tip of their spear. They might do a lot of other stuff. Like for example, Rolex. A lot of people don't realize that Rolex is a non-for-profit. They do a lot of philanthropy. They do a lot of charity, but they don't market that. You'll know it if you own a Rolex and you're in the inner circles, and all the money Rolex makes goes to charity or philanthropy. It's a non-for-profit. But their marketing, the tip of their marketing spear is status. If you own one of these, you're the man. If you own one of these, you're a man of power. You're a man of influence. Rolex is a very symbolic piece for someone to wear. And it's really funny. I love asking people that own a Rolex why they buy it, and they never say status of power. They say, oh, it's a reminder of my success in business. I'm like, no, you bought that for influence and power. Like no one wants to admit it, but that's what it really represents. And one of the cleverest campaigns that Rolex did was they did an ad and it said, even the fakes give you the feeling, and had a picture of a fake Rolex. Like really clever because they know what they're selling, but that's the tip of their spear. They're selling that emotional feeling. That's it. That's as far as they go when they market. They don't say, by the way, we also are a charity. We're also a not-for-profit. We also do philanthropy. We always do a lot of good in the world. You might find it on their website, but they won't lead their messaging with that. If you care to find out, you can dig for it. Yeah. You see what I mean? It's like sharpen the tip of your spear. Yeah. Like focus on the tip of your spear. Keep all your messaging in the bank for later. Put it on your website somewhere. On Instagram, with ads on your website, just tip of the spear, clear, concise messaging. This is the biggest problem brands have is they don't know how to craft the tip of their spear for marketing purposes and be clear and concise as to what they do, why people should care, and why they should pick you.
Yeah, clarity is huge. I think it's not only in branding. I think it goes to all of life, where anything complex tends to use unnecessary energy. Yeah. And is just complicated.
Yeah, people are so busy they don't want to expel energy.
Yeah,
give it to me quick. Like our generation is so lazy. Like our microwave gets down to like 3 seconds and we open the door. I don't have 3 seconds to wait. Give me my noodles. You know what I mean? We're so like immediate action oriented. Like if a brand can't be like, here it is, here's loud as day, clear as like what we do. People just go hard basket, move on. Yeah.
Massive, man. Your work, seriously, it shows expertise. It does, and there is a track record to prove it. And I think right now what you're doing is great.
Thanks, man.
And this actually refers to a quote from your 2016 self.
Dude, I love that you dived into my 2016. Man, I got to go back and read this stuff.
look, this is sage.
Yeah.
I want to die empty of my best work.
Ooh. I remember that quote. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a powerful one because it's like, I want to give it all. I don't want to, I remember like, Gary Vee talks about this. He's like, go spend, a weekend in a retirement home and sit by the bed of a 90-year-old and talk to them about their regrets, And I remember hearing him say that, and I was like, I get it, because I've sat next to 90-year-olds, in my family, and you could tell they regret things, and it's a horrible feeling. And I think, no matter what happens, like even if I crash and burn and fail, it's like I'm young enough to just do it again. And at least I gave it everything I had. So I genuinely believe in just going hell for leather, be a bat out of hell, and just make some stuff happen and crash and burn and learn from it. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about 9-year-olds. If you were 90 years old,
Yeah.
9-year-old self was right there sitting next to us.
Yeah.
What do you think it'd say?
To me or to us?
To you, us.
I think you say do more. And I think if, dude, this is weird, man. Because I went to, if I add a bit to this, I went to Vin Yang's, a special exclusive event that Vin Yang did. Do you know Vin Yang? Incredible guy. Has a background as a magician, and now he teaches people how to use their vocabulary and how to use their voice as an instrument.
Yes.
You know the guy?
I know that guy.
So he put out a post and he said, I'm doing an event. You have to apply for it. And without a doubt in my mind, I was like, Vin's cool. I'm just going to apply for it. I didn't even read it. I was like, I'm in, man. Like, if it's Vin, I'm in. And I went to the website. I punched in my details, filled it out. And then I got an email back saying, you've been accepted. And in my head, it was like maybe a couple hundred people that were going to be in this event. I travel to Adelaide, book into my hotel, go to the venue, and I walk in. It's like this really old theater, like an old theater from like the 30s. I walk in there, and I meet Vin, and it's like this tiny room with catering. And he's like, "Hey, Dain, thanks so much for coming, man." Like, he was just so happy. He felt like sunshine. And I walked up to him, and I was like, "Dude, what's up, man?" He's like, "I'm so glad you could be here." And I'm like, "Cool," but I'm like looking around. I'm like, "This place is tiny. Like, what's happening?" And I met Ali, who's an incredible. He's best friends with Vin, and they do everything together. And they help each other run each other's businesses. It's really funny. And Vin's like, "Come on in." And I walk in, and we walk out on the stage, and on the stage is 10 chairs, and in the auditorium it's empty. There's all these lights on the stage, and the whiteboard's in front of the chairs looking out at the audience. I'm like, what's happening? And it was only 10 people, and it was an exclusive event. And he cherry picked 10 people that were all in a transition in their life. And the event was called Recalibrate. So he's making this public soon. So you can look up Vin and keep an eye out for Recalibrate. Best thing I've ever done in my life, aside from meeting my partner and having kids, right? And I remember sitting down, and at the end of the 2 days, it was a 2-day workshop, and we had to write a letter to ourselves from our future self. And I had never been so emotional. I was like choking up. And I remember getting up on stage, reading this letter, and just crying like a baby for like 10 minutes while I was reading it. But the message to myself was this. It was not to be so hard on myself, and to, spend more time with loved ones, and to find more joy, and to be more present with my team, more present with my family, more present with what I'm doing. Because at that time, I was so caught up in like next step, hunt the next thing. I wasn't really enjoying now. So it was like, come back down and just be present and just enjoy the journey. And the last thing I said to myself was just allow myself to have friends. And this is what I was talking about. Like, I had a pivot point a few months ago, and it was just, okay, I'm allowed to have friends. Like, it sounds super sad, but I was like, you're allowed to have friends. Because I had this belief that I'm too busy, I got too much going on, I don't have time for friends. And since I changed that, I built beautiful relationships with people, and life is more enjoyable. And I think my 90-year-old self talking to myself now, it's pretty much like, stick to that, man. Because that's what life's about. Yeah.
Dain, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, man.
Bro, such an inspiration.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Cool.
It's fun saying this, being in my set. Usually I'm there saying that to the person sitting here. So thanks so much for coming here, man. And yeah, dude, this has been a lot of fun and some really interesting questions. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
See ya.
Thanks, dude. Yes, dude. That's so much better.
That was Now that the episode is over, I'm David. And if you enjoyed that episode, you'd probably be better off watching more. To watch more, please visit Reunite and Instagram, TikTok, and the rest of it. Until then, connect with Honor, and I'm out.